My name is Justin for seminary. For the rest of us, you see behind us, this weekend is our church's 140th anniversary, and I brought a special speaker for that event. His name is Dr. Marvin Jones. He's here with us today.
Hey, Justin.
He's a Baptist historian and a regular church historian, not just Baptist, but he's got a broad range there. He's also a theologian. Tell us a little more about yourself.
Well, I've been in the ministry for 30 some odd years, and I'm 50 years old. I did a couple degrees in church history and theology at University of South Africa in church history, Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary in theology, Dallas Theological Seminary, and Southeastern Seminary at Crystal College. The Lord provided opportunities for me to continue education beyond what I ever thought, and that's what the development the Lord gave me over the years.
Awesome. Well, it was a kind of question I had for you, even knowing you were coming in. I just recently finished reading a book by Thomas Kidd and Barry Hankins about as Baptists in America, and something that I always found interesting. They seem to think there is very little commonality among Baptists. That really there's a couple of loose ends with Baptists specifically about like we kind of agree on baptism, and there's a couple of theological issues, but really it seemed like there's a very loose association of Baptists. What's kind of your take on that? Being a Baptist historian, do you have what's your take on that?
Yeah, now I got to admit I have not read the book yet, so I'm not critiquing the book since I haven't read it. But in generally Baptists are all over the place in a lot of areas, but there usually is a common thread among us, and that is our ecclesiology. Now it takes on different shapes and forms and looks different at different locations, but we do believe in the Lordship of Christ.
Okay.
We do believe in believers' baptism, and in various degrees we believe in close communion, and some of us go to the extreme to closed. Some of us go to the opposite extreme of open. But we generally, and again, this is a generic statement, generally I want to emphasize that, are in the close area of communion. It follows baptism.
Yeah.
And believers' baptism, of course, sets the precedent that we reject infant baptism. We need to be careful with children. I know that sounds kind of unusual, but the gospel is priority. And so an understanding of the gospel dictates to whether a profession of faith has been made. If so, then of course baptism is the follow-up with the profession. So those are the general areas of agreement. Soteriologically, from the gamut from extreme Arminianism to hyper-Calvinism. The one thing in common there is we do believe people need to be saved. The question of methodology, it's a question. In order of salvation, that's also a question. But the general theme, I think, that unites Baptists are our ecclesiology and a loosely threaded soteriology.
All right.
But that book is on my check-to-do read list.
Yeah.
Someday.
It was excellent. Actually, I think there's a lot to enjoy about that book. So yeah, I'll look forward to talking to you more about it after you.
Thomas Kidd, and they're a couple of my favorite authors.
Right.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm not slamming that book at all.
Right. Yeah.
I really want to read it.
Right. So we're not here to talk about Baptists in America. One of the things I do want to talk about is your book, Beginnings of Baptist Ecclesiology. Yeah, you wrote this.
Catchy title, huh?
I know. It's makes you want to read it, salivating just by reading the title. So tell me about this book. What made you want to write this book? What's kind of some of the big highlights?
Well, what made me want to write the book? It actually starts in 2007. I was invited to teach Baptist history in Oradea, Romania at Emmanuel University. And I had the degree from the University of South Africa in church history, and particularly in patristics. And so the invitation came, and I told the powers that be there that although I'm quite familiar with Baptist history, it's not really my forte.
Right.
And they still issued the invitation with the promise that I would get up to speed on it.
Right.
So I spent the next 6 months really digging into Baptist history, our roots, and that in itself runs the gamut from where those roots start and who you read. And I saw some things that I thought, that would be a good dissertation if I were back in school and all that, but I'm not.
Yeah.
So, but it kept gnawing at me.
Yeah.
And the one guy I couldn't shake was Thomas Hellas, and notice the way I said it, Hellas, and John Smith.
Not Elvis.
Yeah, I got nailed on it by a professor. I'm still not certain he's right, but he nailed me anyway. He told me the W is silent. Didn't realize that. And he said, for all practical purposes, the H at the front may be silent, but nobody knows that. And I thought, well, you do. And I said, so how would you pronounce his name? He said, if the H is silent, it would be Thomas Ellis. Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
But we don't know if the H is silent, but he would not allow me to pronounce in class, and that's a different story too, the W. So
Right.
I got used to saying Thomas Hellas.
Yeah.
It may very well be Hellas. I don't really know that.
Can't talk to what
Yeah.
have it, right?
Yeah, so I'm compiling all these areas of research that, somebody needs to write a book on this, but it's not going to be me.
Little did you know.
Through a series of inquiries, I wound up flying to Southwestern Seminary from Atlanta, where I was teaching at Luther Rice, and my doctoral supervisor was Dr. Malcolm Yarnell. And I got exceptions to break the rules. Because I had a teaching position, Southwestern did not require me to move to Fort Worth and live within a 50-mile radius, which was the rules at that time. So those inquiries led to me applying to do another PhD, which I still don't understand that.
Yeah.
Nor do I understand how I had the money to continue the plane flights. Because as soon as I finished the seminars, that money went away. That's one of the questions I'm going to ask the Lord is, why do you provide what we need? Why don't you provide what we want after we do what we need?
Right.
But anyway, so the Lord provided the funds for me to fly out there. Well, all of my seminars were in theology and a few in historical theology. And so I focused on the theological aspects of Thomas Hellas and how he made an impact with John Smith to come out of English separatism, meet up with the Mennonites. He thanked them for learning from them, but would not join them.
Right.
And so he basically, after John Smith defected, and I'm kind of giving away the book, he basically took the reins over as the leader of the First Baptist Church, which was a General Baptist church.
Right.
And so I've often questioned, where did our roots come from? Did they come from the Anabaptist? Are we physical descendants there? Did we come from the English separatists? Are we lineal descendants there? And my answer is a mixture of both. We definitely came out of the English separatists. There's no doubt about that. But the influence of the Mennonites and other continental Anabaptists was certainly there in Amsterdam.
Right.
And so it was a great time in their lives for all those ideals to be floating around, and they impacted a small group of English separatists who became Baptist. And that's the basic beginning of Baptist ecclesiology.
Okay. Yeah. So being that, again, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Baptists are not generally great at being like, oh, what happened in history matters.
Oh yeah.
We like to kind of, Baptists have been separatists for, and controversial. It followed us well. And
Isolationist to some extent.
Right. And there's it's not necessarily a bad attribute of Baptists because it keeps us on our toes theologically as well. So looking back then at historical Baptists like Hellas, what are some things that Baptists can learn from these kind of guys?
Well, a couple things. When I got into Hellas, I was surprised at what I found. Everyone knows, I knew that, of course, it's a call for religious freedom, and we'll talk about that in a second. But what I didn't know, what I didn't expect, was that it's a call to Baptist ecclesiology as well, to be different from the Mennonites, to be different from the Church of England, or even the Separatist or Roman Catholicism. that Baptists do have a voice and a platform and a theology all their own.
Yeah.
And so I think in the book, if I've understood it right, Thomas Hellis is saying, look, we're not Mennonites. Well, okay, we love them, and we've learned a lot from them.
Right.
We're not English separatists. Hey, Thomas, he used to be one. Yeah. We're not Church of England. We're not Roman Catholic. We're Baptist.
Right.
We're true to the Word. It is the supreme authority for our lives. Our ecclesiology is built upon it. And so we believe we are a legitimate, true church.
Yeah.
He condemns the other ecclesiologies. He never says they're not a true church. He just says we're a better one.
Right.
And I happen to agree with him. That doesn't mean we're healthy in every situation.
Right.
I don't believe that either. But I do believe the fundamental foundation is there for ecclesiology.
Right.
The second thing, it is a call of religious liberty. So, okay, you don't want to be a Baptist, that's fine. You shouldn't be persecuted for it. At the same time, don't persecute us. You should follow the conscience, the law of liberty, the Lord, all of that. If he leads you to be a different Christian in a different area, and I don't mean different Christian as if there's an alternative, but if he leads you to another church that's different from what we are, you should have the freedom to do that. We can disagree, we can love one another, but we should be able to tolerate each other in Christ.
Right.
And that is the call of the book as well.
Nice.
So,
Yeah. That's
so
great.
I think that's relevant today.
Yeah.
I think we should be more tolerant of theological positions. I also think we should be more tolerant of those who disagree with us ecclesiologically.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's awesome. So I also I know we wanted to mainly promote this book on Baptist ecclesiology, but you have another book coming out.
Yeah, I'm the editor. I'm not gonna go down with this one.
Right. You brought other people on board. So the book is called, at least the current title is Recovering Historical Christology for Today's Church.
Yes.
And what you did is you went even further back than Hellis.
Yes.
And that's
back to
also,
some of my roots. Yeah.
Right. And again, speaking again as Baptist, that seems to be another thing that seems to get avoided is going back to the church fathers.
To the patristics.
Especially, when you talk about creedal theology, there's been very distinct groups of Baptists that have been anti-creedal. But in this book, you go about this with the creeds.
Yes, I do. Let me mention some of the authors and a little bit of what I consider a revival of patristics. We have Dr. Stephen Presley at Southwestern Seminary. He's University of Aberdeen in patristics.
Yeah.
Dr. Michael Haken up at Southern. He's contributed a wonderful chapter. Dr. Peter Beck at Charleston Southern. Who else? Dr. Philip Caples, Dr. Adam Harwood. Philip Caples, of course, is at Louisiana College. Dr. Harwood's at New Orleans. Dr. Justin Langford and I wrote a couple of chapters. Then I contributed a couple of chapters. And you also contributed to section of the chapter, which made the book outstanding.
Lies.
But yeah, there's a revival of patristics going on right now in the convention, and I'm definitely glad to see it. They didn't do everything right. Okay,
right.
They didn't. Nobody does. But what they did do is they gave us the doctrine of Christology well defined.
Yeah.
They gave us pneumatology well defined. I think they moved into some errors in the medieval ages with ecclesiology, but we can suspend that for a debate later.
Right.
But the Christology that the patristics hammered out.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. They hammered it out. Not one reformer in the Reformation, and not one current Baptist, and not one current evangelical technically disagrees with it.
Right.
The foundation is that solid.
Yeah.
So we hearken back to and acknowledge the creeds of the early church.
Yeah.
And I think that needs to be rediscovered for Baptists.
And I think that what's interesting about what you're saying there, most of the reformers were hearkening back to the church fathers.
Yes, they were.
Even the earliest Baptists, guys like Thomas Grantham.
Grantham being one of them, yeah.
Hundreds and hundreds. I did a paper on Grantham.
Even Hellis as well.
Right. Hundreds of references to the church fathers. I mean, they were using the fathers, and there's so I think it's great that you are helping with this same movement of we're trying to, as Baptists, we're bringing the fathers back in and saying, look, these guys are valuable to read. We don't have to. Church history doesn't have to start with John Calvin. It can go back
Or
to
the Reformation.
Right. It can go back to Athanasius, Irenaeus, and even Justin Martyr.
Well, we've got wonderful young men like Brandon Smith and a brilliant scholar named Matt Emerson. Some of those guys who are re-plowing this ground again, and I thank God for them. I do think the patristics have a voice today that we need to desperately hear.
Yeah.
And one is Christology. Who is Jesus Christ? Well, who he is biblically, and then how do we take that biblical message from the patristics into today's culture through the contemporary church.
Right.
And that's the basis of the book, is how to make that message from the patristics and even the biblical foundation come alive again.
Right.
For our churches.
That's great. So that book, spring, summer, not sure yet.
Well, within stock, I've got to finish a few edits, I will admit. I'm trying to get it to him this very week.
Editing's never over.
Oh.
Every scholar knows that.
My fear is there may be a purgatory and I'm stuck editing it.
Right.
Or grading papers. Hopefully it'll get done this week, and Stock has said if it can get to them in the next couple of weeks, that maybe by mid-spring, early summer, we'll see it. It's got a definite flow to it. The first section, we deal with the biblical data. The second section, we deal with the councils, the Council of Nicaea, Constantinople, Ephesus, Chalcedon. And then the third section is a little bit more practical, how to preach it, with a fine chapter from Dr. Philip Caples. And then some application in some other areas from Dr. Adam Harwood at New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. So I think it's well laid out. It's basically designed for the pastor or the student beginning to study ecclesiology.
Yeah.
Maybe even the layman who's studying with their pastor on a Wednesday night.
Christology.
Christology. I'm sorry.
That's right.
So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it sounds. I'm really excited about it coming out as well. Not just because my name's going to be in print on it, but I know there's just some great scholarship that's gone into the book as well. Again, anytime we're taking, my background, especially with patristics, anytime we're taking the church fathers and saying,
where'd you learn patristics at, by the way?
Where did I get introduced to it? That was from Dr. Marvin Jones.
Just kidding.
It was during theology.
Don't blame me.
Well, no. Theology classes at Tennessee Temple University. So I want to thank you for that as well, for some of the direction. I know, but I still do want to thank you for that. So again, thank you for the interview.
No, it was great, guys.
And appreciate getting some insight. Beginnings of Baptist Ecclesiology. Check this one out. Keep a lookout on Whitfinstock's website for the Recovering Historical Christology book. Hopefully, they do have their upcoming releases listed on their website, so keep an eye open for that. Get ready to pre-order. I'm excited about these books. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you. I
for the
appreciate
opportunity to let us know more about what's going on.
Thank you.
Thank you.